Voy a comenzar leyendo las conclusiones de un taller que tuvo lugar el miércoles en San Cine. Es un festival de cine y ecología de aquí de Barcelona. Y luego doy paso a Miquel y así vamos adelantando. Voy a apoyar el papel, ya que tengo aquí esto. Se llamaba Repensem i reciclem, per un cinema sostenible. Conclusiones. El pasado miércoles 13 de noviembre se organizó una mesa de trabajo bajo el título Repensemos y reciclemos por un cine sostenible. Estuvo organizada por R4 Films, un grupo de trabajo pionero formado por Catalunya Film Festivals, Suncine, Observatori de la Producció Audiovisual, UPF, y Productors Audiovisuals de Catalunya, PAC, buscando una mirada totalmente transversal. Participaron en ella cerca de 30 profesionales de festivales, universidades y escuelas, productoras, film commissions e instituciones, incluyendo a productores y directores internacionales de San Cine con experiencias sostenibles. Hemos resumido lo más destacado de la mesa en estos 10 puntos. Un sector que empuja, unas instituciones que deben activarse. El sector está sensibilizado, lo que le falta es actuar. Hay que hacerlo cambiando la forma de pensar y, sobre todo, con la implicación activa de las instituciones. Queda mucho camino por hacer y su implicación es determinante. 2. Creaciones de un sello ya. Es prioritaria la creación de un sello, Green Shooting Card, supongo. Además, es imprescindible que se haga de forma colectiva, entre sector e instituciones, para que sea realmente útil. 3. ¿Cómo actuar? El sector pide a gritos un código de buena conducta, que sirva para todos. El sello podría ser la solución, pero mientras tanto se tiene la sensación de estar un poco huérfanos en ese sentido. Una checklist, por ejemplo, ayudaría a que se aplicaran las mismas medidas en práctica. Una cosa recurrente es que el sector actúe por conciencia propia, haciendo cosas que ya hacen en su vida personal, pero hay que ir más allá de esto. Las prácticas más recurrentes que surgieron se centraban en la eliminación de botellas de plástico, eliminación de papel en planes de rodaje y comunicaciones y catering de kilómetro cero. También aparece una cierta concienciación respecto a la gestión de residuos para reducir el impacto de los rodajes, pero en general las medidas adoptadas son escasas. 4. ¿Cómo se visualiza la sostenibilidad? A la espera de un sello y de un manual, las producciones y los festivales que ya se hacen de manera sostenible consideran que no tienen la visibilidad suficiente. Este valor añadido, de alguna manera, queda en nada porque no se sabe cómo comunicarlo y cómo diferenciarse. 5. ¿Cómo se calcula la sostenibilidad? Imprescindible. Hacen falta más información e investigación. Necesidad de poder medir la huella de las acciones. Existe la sensación de estar haciendo algunas cosas sin la seguridad de que aporten beneficios reales. Por ejemplo, ¿es realmente más sostenible usar pilas recargables, con el gasto de energía que suponen que usar pilas desechables? Otro ejemplo, la postproducción también parece una buena solución para ser más sostenible, pero la huella digital que supone no está medida. Falta información y herramientas de cálculo. Lo vamos a averiguar todo aquí con Joana. Puesta en valor de la figura del ecoassistant. La figura del ecoassistant se valora positivamente, aunque desde aquí las productoras preocupan que su gasto sea extra. La sostenibilidad todavía se asocia a gasto. En algunos casos, aunque se comenta que una buena preproducción ayuda a reducirlos. Hay una demanda de más información en procesos concretos, la gestión de residuos después de un rodaje, por ejemplo, y esta figura podría ser clave desde la preproducción. 7. La sostenibilidad no solo consiste en reciclar. La sostenibilidad va más allá de las prácticas verdes, que permiten reducir la huella de carbono que se traducen en reciclaje, gestión de residuos, prácticas de kilómetro cero o consumos alternativos de energía. A veces olvidamos que la sostenibilidad incluye un componente social imprescindible. La paridad de género o la inclusión deben formar parte de las producciones. Se puede incidir claramente desde la creación de contenido, guión, hasta la producción. 8. Una generación más concienciada. Desde el punto de vista universitario, los alumnos llegan mucho más concienciados, pero hay que incentivarlos. En algunos casos, ven los criterios de sostenibilidad como un ahorro y hay que hacerles comprender que no solo son útiles para ahora que tienen recursos limitados, sino que deberán aplicarlos siempre. Las universidades demuestran estar ya implicadas en el tema e intentan implementarlo de forma transversal, aunque cada una a su ritmo. Es importante destacar que trabajan también con los alumnos la sostenibilidad en los contenidos, desde el punto de vista social, que ya enumerábamos, pero también como reflejo en los hábitos de los personajes que pueden reciclar o conducir coches eléctricos. 9. Exposición y limitaciones de los festivales. Los festivales son plataformas de acceso directo al público, que quieren promover comportamientos éticos y que se implican socialmente, pero a veces se encuentran con limitaciones, ya que se realizan en salas de exhibición y o en espacios que no siempre tienen prácticas sostenibles. Si se intentan deslocalizar la cultura, creando festivales en sitios menos accesibles, se presenta enseguida el problema del transporte y que los interlocutores locales tampoco acostumbran a estar concienciados. 10. Film Commission en la encrucijada. Las Film Commissions quieren implicarse, pero algunas se encuentran con que si exigen condiciones de sostenibilidad para los rodajes, las producciones buscan sitios alternativos donde no les pongan tantos problemas. Y aquí tengo una cosita en cursiva que pone: la fase de reflexión y sensibilización está superada. Hay que pasar a la acción. Vamos a empezar con la jornada. Miquel, por favor, suba. Perdón, es que me llegó anoche, no me ha dado tiempo ni a leérmelo, ni a hacerlo más. No. Bueno, da igual, le paso el mío, no te preocupes, John. ¿Qué? Os presento a Miquel Curanta, director del ICEC, el Instituto Català d'Empreses Culturals. Quiero dar ante todo las gracias al ESDE, al ESADE, y a Edgar y a Joan, en este caso, que me han ayudado con esta jornada muchísimo, sobre todo porque llevamos 10 años haciendo jornadas gracias a ellos, y espero que no pare el apoyo, que no se acabe aquí, aunque se supone que es desarrollo y nos vamos desarrollando y quieren que... Pero bueno, al PAC, al soporte del PAC, de Catalunya Film Festivals, y de Suncine, que nos han traído a Susan Harle, que la hemos aprovechado y haciendo sostenible todos los eventos. Bienvenido por primera vez a la alternativa. Va llegando la gente, te lo prometo, sí, suele pasar.
Bueno, no pasa nada, sí. És normal, és sueño. Digo, és sueño.
Sí.
Bueno, jo ho faré curt. Y la Patricia ha acabat dient, has dicho, vamos a pasar a la acción. Bueno, pues nosotros anem a pasar a la acción. Yo añadiría otro punto a los 10 que has leído, que es el de la capa de cómo desde el sector de las artes, de la cultura, en este caso del cine, añadimos una capa de comunicación, de concienciación, porque me da la sensación que hablamos mucho de cómo poder ser más sostenibles en términos de eficiencia de las empresas, de reducción de huella de carbono, de eficiencia de costes, etcétera, etcétera. Pero hay una cosa que no estamos haciendo, que es explicarlo a la gente. La necesidad que los artistas salgan y digan, oye, señoras y señores de este país, además de hacerlo, tenemos que explicarlo, tenemos que ser todos muy conscientes. Yo he dicho antes, vamos a pasar a la acción. Nosotros en el 2020 vamos a implementar una serie de criterios que marcarán un poco la hoja de ruta del ISEC. Jo no sé per què parlo en castellà. Puc parlar en català, no? Marcarem una sèrie de criteris que els afegirem a totes les nostres línies, que hi ha criteri lingüístic, català, anem a potenciar el català en els àmbits on puguem, el talent emergent, l'emprenedoria, anem a potenciar també els públics, anem a potenciar el gènere i anem a potenciar la sostenibilitat. Això ho farem en totes les nostres línies que tenim, en tenim 44, doncs en totes elles intentarem implementar tots aquests criteris. Ho farem de manera progressiva perquè no tots els podem implementar a saco, porque nos vamos a cargar medio sector y no es el caso, no hace falta, pero vamos a hacerlo, vamos a pasar a la acción, a esta acción que decía Patricia. En lo que se refiere a sostenibilidad, ¿cómo vamos a hacerlo? Pues lo vamos a hacer progresivamente. Para empezar, necesitamos tener un poco una radiografía de qué es lo que está pasando en todos los sectores con los que trabajamos, incluido el cine, desde la producción hasta la distribución, pasando por exhibición y toda la cadena de valor. Hemos encargado ya un estudio a una consultora que está trabajando en ello, que ha generado no sé cuántos centenares de encuestas para conocer un poco todas las prácticas que se están haciendo en las empresas de este país. Y a partir de este estudio vamos a empezar a diseñar un poco cuál es la hoja de ruta que en materia de sostenibilidad debemos seguir un poco todos, ¿no? Adaptándola a cada uno de los ámbitos. No es lo mismo la música, los festivales, donde los generadores, el plástico... No es lo mismo esto que, obviamente, un green shooting o bueno, lo que hay más allá del green shooting, pero vamos a trabajar en ello. Y a mí, que además me gusta, además de comprometerme y obligarme a hacer desde la administración cosas, desarrollar políticas que intenten transformar cosas, me gusta exigir también a la gente que viene, porque al final nosotros trabajamos para vosotros, pero también nos gusta exigir. Y exigimos esto un poco, que todos os comprometáis, que nos comprometamos todos, pues hacer un poco lo que hacen los ingleses, ¿no? Que cuando hace falta se encadenan allí en un puente de Westminster con una pancarta y dicen, oye, hasta que no se implementa una política de sostenibilidad medioambiental, de aquí no se mueve nadie. Pues hagamos un poco lo mismo. No, yo no voy a... Bueno, ahora estamos un poco de resaquilla, ¿no? Pero hay que hacerlo, insisto, no va solamente de ahorro de costes, no solamente va de reducir emisiones, va de mejorar la vida de todos y va de, pues eso, de ser todos un poco más conscientes que no todo es pagar menos de factura de la luz. Nosotros nos hemos comprometido, nos comprometemos con ello y vamos a intentar aplicar en la medida de lo que sea posible una serie de cambios que lo hagan posible, valga la redundancia, y ya está. Gracias.
¿Has tornado a cambiar el castellano? Vale, intentaremos salir de aquí con otras conclusiones también. Muchas gracias, Miquel. Voy a dar paso a Joana, nuestra primera ponente. ¿Cambiamos cartela? Muchas gracias por madrugar.
Sí, pot sortir la pantalla del navegador? Vale. Bueno, a mi em sap greu perquè, bon dia, em dic Joana, soc artista, investigadora, i la meva feina ha tocat molts camps, però m'he centrat molt en revelar tot l'ecosistema de videovigilància online, infraestructures d'internet i sobretot tota la part mediambiental de dades, tot l'impacte que té, que sembla una cosa que sigui invisible però que realment hi és. I és una mica el que parlaré avui, perquè jo crec que en el context ara cine no es pot separar cine i dades, crec que no són coses diferents, sobretot quan estem parlant d'un àmbit digital i que la producció és íntegrament digital ara. Digue'm. Però ahí... Clar. Això és una peça que vaig fer el 2014, que és ben bé això, no? A veure, això, les dades no són acurades del tot, sí que estan referenciades i vaig utilitzar una mesura que es va determinar a la Universitat de Berkeley, però igualment, internet...
But all the same, the internet is such a large ecosystem. It's probably the largest infrastructure that has been built as human beings, but it's very invisible. The only thing we communicate with on the internet are interfaces. I see some phones here, some computer screens, but that's all. And everything that is beyond or behind interfaces is dark. We don't see it, we don't know it's there. Internet is very material. Some people have sold us the idea that the internet is a cloud, it's above somewhere, it does not pollute. This narrative is easy to understand. But is this far from reality? Actually, the internet is this. The internet is very material, it is dirty, it pollutes a lot, and it's underground. And this internet that they sold us, where everything is up in the air, while the amount of information transported through the air is minimal, everything else is underground. This is a data center in New York, one of the most important data centers in the world because of the number of connections it contains, and this is a room where all of the wires coming from the Atlantic Ocean enter the United States. Probably most of them come from Europe. And this is the internet as well. There are people on the internet, and it's a big mess. When I see this picture, I don't really understand how the internet can work at all. So I understand it can only work, or I understand there's also a lot of electricity involved and a big environmental impact. But these are the things we do not see, and since we do not see all of these, and internet is so big and there are so many stakeholders It is impossible to determine the exact amount of emissions. It is impossible to calculate the amount of energy needed to operate on the internet. It is impossible to calculate the amount of energy, electricity that we use on a daily basis to send emails, WhatsApps or videos, and not to talk about streaming platforms. We'll talk about them later, but it is a lot. But as I said, we cannot calculate it because we cannot see all of the infrastructure behind it. And even if we were to see it, we would not be able to quantify it because it's too big. And this is the internet map, the world map of the internet. This is the backbone, as they call it. The backbone of the internet. All of the wires connecting the different continents. They are ocean wires. They're underwater. We don't have the time to get into detail. But I've been researching about environmental impact in internet and devices for a long time, and in 2010 this study was published, created by a Dutch researcher. In terms of data, internet and sustainability, there are many women and not that many men. I think this is something we should take into account. So for the first time, devices. It was determined that devices are the top most polluting industry in the world, ahead of food, meat, housing, transportation, coffee and aviation. Actually, in 2008, the internet amounted to 2% of global emissions, which was higher than the aviation industry. And with the amount of devices connected to the internet, the amount of data, this figure has increased dramatically, and we're talking about 9 years. 9 years that have elapsed. Skip that, we won't have the time to talk about that, and let's talk about the data. And the reference I always use when I do these calculations is this one. 1 megabyte is equivalent to 7.072 grams of CO2, transferring 1 megabyte of information. And if this transfer is done with 3G or 4G networks, this is 4 or 5 times. In Berkeley in 2008, and it calculated the amount of CO2 generated by online advertising. This is a study that was conducted in a specific network with a specific case and specific devices, so this figure is right now obsolete, but any figure we can use will be obsolete. I think it's good to have a reference, a benchmark in terms of communication and raising awareness, at least having a number of figures, something you can hold on to. But this is not science, not by far. This is not true fact, not by far. So I started my project, and something I was concerned about was how can we communicate this to people, because in 2014, even if we're talking a lot more about this, but in 2013 when I started researching, we did not talk about any of that. Actually, if you told people, they said, oh, true, this must be polluting, this must generate CO2. It is impossible for it not to be polluting. This equation, which is so obvious, is not in all of our minds. We know that a car pollutes, that a plane pollutes, but we're not aware of the fact that transferring data pollutes, and it does, and a lot. And since the cause and the consequence are so far apart, when we do something online, the environmental impact is so far apart, it's easier to have this narrative of the cloud, because it eliminates any sort of friction or complexity, and it's like nothing's happening at all. But it is. So I wanted to make all of this problem visible in a way people could see it. In the first project you saw the clouds, and it's very impressive with the figures, but the figures don't tell us much sometimes, or they tell us quite a lot, but we cannot have an emotional connection with them. So I said, okay, it would be very nice, for example, to show trees, which is something that we cannot quantify either. Maybe our relationship to trees is closer, we're more connected because they're living beings. So I calculated the amount of trees necessary to absorb the emissions in real time, the emissions of accessing generated by accessing Google.com. Google.com has an average of 60,000 visits per second, and the weight of the site is 6.2 megabytes. So we do the calculations, it's not difficult, and what I came up with, I researched the amount of trees necessary, so it was about 23 trees per second. But this is an approximation, a rough approximation, because CO2 absorption by trees is a system which is a lot more complex than taking 23 trees and saying they absorb this amount of CO2. But this helped me to communicate that data have an impact which is true, which is real, and they have an impact on our ecosystems. Patricia, let me know if I'm running out of time.
Bueno, hi ha un altre projecte que també és molt interessant, perquè des de la part d'art és un tema...
There's another project which is very interesting, and the art has not explored this field so much. More people are exploring now and are doing work in this area, in this field. But until recently, I think it was just me, this guy, and maybe someone else that I'm forgetting, but I had not found any other artists who work on the data transfer, energy costs, and these artist Michael Sopp created this project, which I think is quite related to what we're talking about today, the cinema industry. And he calculated the amount of coal that they had to burn to serve 1 million visits of the trailer of Avatar on YouTube, the electricity necessary to watch the Avatar trailer 1 million times, and this was this amount of coal, and this is quite impressive as well, because this is quite a large cube. So these are ways of making it visible, and I think we're quite late in terms of taking action, but unfortunately we still need to raise a lot of awareness. As I said before, all of this math, data equals energy equals environmental impact, we don't have this in mind. And it's difficult to introduce it in people's minds, more so currently. So, if we need to stop and think about how to make our data system more sustainable, well, we produce technology that will allow us to generate even more data. We're not doing that, we're doing it the other way around, we're generating more data. As an average, with 3G and 4G, we used to produce 2 gigabytes of data a month. No, not per month, it's 2 gigabytes per day, sorry. I was quite sleepy when I did this. It's 2 gigabytes per day, not per month. And with 5G, we can transfer 30 gigabytes per day. And this is huge. And if you understand the amount of CO2 and everything we explained that this generates, the amount of emissions caused by the internet or the digital industry will increase exponentially. So then we wonder, can really the planet take this on? Can it survive that? By next year, the amount of devices connected to the internet will be 3 times the global population. We're no longer talking about machines, we're talking about machines that consume a lot of natural resources in production. 80% of resources consumed by the device are consumed during the production phase of the device, and 20% is consumed when we use it. So we're talking about machines which are competitors. They compete for energy, and we don't see them like that as a competing species or a different species, but they are, because they consume a lot of resources. Same thing, it will take more than 5 million years to watch the amount of video that will cross the internet each month in 2020, and every second 1 million minutes of video will cross the network by 2020. And this is a lot, and this is why we need to make this industry very sustainable. And this is another video And I liked this one because it was the first time there was a meme that explained this. So watching 10 minutes of kitty videos on the internet is equivalent to 1 gram of CO2. It's a speculation, but it is there and it's good to make people understand. And the energy of using YouTube on an annual basis is equivalent to that of a small city like Frankfurt or Glasgow over the course of a year. So the energy consumed in 2013 by YouTube was the same as the amount consumed by a country such as Burkina Faso, and in 2016 Google or Facebook used the same amount of energy as a country like Turkey on a yearly basis. And this is another project which is not public yet. And what it attempts to do, we will probably launch it next week. So it tries to calculate all of these processes that go beyond the interface, everything that's behind the interface. So I bought a book on Amazon and I tracked all of the code that was behind all of the interfaces that I had to navigate. And it's massive. I'll explain it slowly, but they were more than 8,000 pages of code with a total weight of 13 megabytes. And a lot of the energy necessary to load all of this code, all of these processes, lies on the user, because all of this is loaded on your computer, and the same thing happens with streaming platforms. And this is something to bear in mind. There is an energy spending that I don't know if they calculate in the cinema industry, in the content industry. There is a lot of energy that is provided by the user's computer, and it is more difficult to calculate and to understand.
We're talking about data, but this information, this data is generated and live in these data centers, these mega structures. This is a data center belonging to Facebook in Ireland. And they are hyperscale data centers. And these spaces also take up a lot of space, these buildings. Typically, these buildings could occupy over 160,000 square meters, which are 24 football pitches altogether. So this is a vast data center, and Facebook has these all around the world. And a few in the United States, of course, like 10 or 15 at least. One of the most dramatic problems, more than big data centers and the environmental impact of having a venue that big, is that it generates a lot of heat. Most of the energy in a data center is used basically to cool down the center, and this is something that concerns companies a lot. So Microsoft had this great idea. This is a pilot project, and they thought, well, let's have data centers under the sea, under the ocean, to cool the data centers down, because, well, oceans will cool them down automatically. But they are not thinking how the data centers will be warming up the bottom of the sea or the ocean. They also have on the website of this project, they also have cameras that show how the marine life lives in perfect harmony with data centers.
Aquí hi ha un altre informe que això és un informe que va fer Greenpeace.
Something Greenpeace assembled. This is from 2017, where we see the amount of renewable energies used by several companies. So Amazon is very far. In fact, Amazon this year didn't want to explain the amount of emissions issued by their projects, and they say they're 50% renewable. But this is also quite doubtful. Amazon is particularly critical, Google, Microsoft, they also are, but they represent 35–40% of the entire cloud computing market. That's why it's so important that they start working on sustainability. Then we see this man doing this. This is Jeff Bezos. And we are opening a wind farm, so we're sustainable now. But the irony in all this is that these people, and this is a conference from March this year, Amazon is working a lot with the fossil fuel sector. And this is what they took to the conference, Fuel the Future. And they are delivering lots of processes to be more efficient in the extraction of oil, to be more efficient and faster. So artificial intelligence, cloud computing services, etc. And this is very dramatic because almost no one knows about this. This is what they explain. They work with some of the most relevant companies in fossil fuel industry around the world, so Microsoft, Amazon, Google too. And while these companies invest money in other companies or organizations that play against climate change, they are also investing money in lobbies that certainly reject climate change. I am explaining this because it's important to understand all this irony behind, well, this brainwashing as it's called, or face washing, greenwashing. It's important to ask these companies to carry out their tasks, especially because of the corporate social responsibility they have on the planet. And that's going to be the end. And if you have any questions, you can ask them now. Thank you very much.
¿Tenéis alguna pregunta? Invitamos a Virgin.
Questions? So let's invite Bridget Heidsieck to come on stage.
Muchísimas gracias, Joana.
Thank you very much, Joana.
So, hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Birgit Heidsieck.
Me llamo Birgit Heidsieck, soy de Alemania.
The publisher and chief editor of Green Film Shooting magazine, which is
trabajo en la revista, soy redactora jefe de la revista Green Film Shooting, producción de medios y también productora de un informe verde o ecológico que tiene varios grupos y subgrupos ecológicos, cada vez más miembros se están uniendo. Después hablaremos también con dos de los miembros. Y también trabajo en la consultoría del Film Fund, German Federal Film Fund, el Fondo Cineasta Federal de Alemania. Yo estaré en una visión general de la producción, preproducción, postproducción y también
sustainability, of course, starts with awareness. So we know that
sabemos
we really have to change our actions in order to become more sustainable. So every year is getting hotter and hotter, and the problem is that all the carbon emissions, they do have an impact on the weather, and there are more and more weather extremes all over the world. So the impact of climate change, it's really damaging and it's threatening our existence. So what is it? What can we do in film production to reduce this impact? So a European feature film, in average, the production emits between 650 and 1,000 tons of carbon, but this is a number, this doesn't really tell us so much, but the impact is that 1 ton of carbon has the effect that 3 square meters of ice are melting in the Arctic. So essentially, with one film production, we are destroying ice of the size of a couple of soccer fields. So this is really not a good thing. And in television productions, if they are not so huge productions, of course the impact is a bit smaller. But still, the average, this is an older number, it's already 3 years old, but from the study, so in Great Britain, they calculated about 200,000 tons of carbon emissions for television production. There are a lot of carbon calculators, meanwhile, also for film production, and most of the emissions that are generated in film are really made by energy. This is the hugest factor, and also transportation. So therefore, it's really crucial if we want to go greener with the film to communicate it to the crew. A couple of years ago, it was still a great event if a film was shot in a big city and it attracted many people, and so everybody said, oh, there are stars shooting, but nowadays it has a little bit turned around and has more the effect that film teams, they are not so welcome because they make a lot of noise, they are polluting the air, they are making a mess. So to change that a little bit, if you want to produce a film in a more sustainable way, the first action is really to talk to the crew, to inform them we really want to do it in a different way, in a better way. There has to be one person who is in charge of all these sustainable measures. This can be an eco-consultant, or it can be a production manager, somebody from the crew who is really in charge of it. Then it's important to schedule meetings with the different heads of department, that everybody in all the different departments can think about it. What can we maybe do differently? And of course, it's crucial to send out an email and really to send out this message to all the cast and crew members. And if it's possible, also have a meeting with somebody who is maybe doing a presentation and gives them an outline and a reminder, we really want to do things differently here. So it all starts with a production office. This is very important, the planning, because in the pre-production stage, you decide what kind of material you rent and acquire and buy, and how you organize things. So in the office itself, it's you can really do very simple measures, the same that you can do in other jobs or that you can do at home, that you reduce your paper consumption, if you don't print so much, if you do it double-sided, you use recycling paper, and it should be certified with maybe a label like PEFC, which is stronger than FSC. You avoid screensavers. You shut down the computer when you don't need it. You shut off the light and the heating when you leave the room. But there are also things like not everybody is thinking of, that also a lot of electric and electronic devices, they still consume energy even if you are not using them in a standby mode. Like if you have a coffee machine or a water boiler and it's attached to the grid all the time, and even if you don't heat the water, it's standing there, and for 24 hours it's just consuming a tiny bit of energy. So there are even very small devices where you can even measure the kind of the amount of energy it's consuming. And I mean, it's just very, very little. But if you're doing it for 24 hours and everybody does it, in the end, it's a lot of energy. So this can be changed if we are just aware of this. And this is, of course, like having, saving some resources is also saving some money. Then if we are using cleaning products, they should be biodegradable. And everybody probably already heard that it's better to have fair trade products for coffee and tea. And instead of having giving out so many plastic bottles to people, it's becoming more and more a habit that people really bringing their own coffee mug, their own plastic bottle, to avoid huge amounts of plastic. And so single-use plastic will be banned, and not all of it, unfortunately, but this is also a EU regulation that by 2030 a lot of plastic cannot be sold anymore. So plastic will be banned, partly at least, but not the bottles yet. So, but the most important factors in terms of carbon emissions are energy and transportation. And if you are planning a production, you can also plan where do you really shoot, where are the locations you like to shoot. Are they really located far each other, or maybe you can find places where you can also use rooms nearby for makeup and costumes. You need to plan everything careful, and if you don't have so big distances between the different locations, then you save time and you save money, and it's also much better for the crew if they don't have to travel all the time back and forth. And if you don't have a hotel nearby, maybe you can rent an apartment instead where you can accommodate people. So you really have to rethink the process, what can be done that you are a little bit more flexible. This is a movie which was in Berlinale competition in 2018. It was a German-French co-production about the life of Romy Schneider, 3 Days in Quiberon by Emily Artif. And what made this film really sustainable was that the entire film was really shot at one location, at an old kind of a museum at the Baltics. And so the actors, they could really walk to the set, and also the crew, of course. So therefore, the production, they saved a lot of money, and only some background shots were then taken in Quiberon. So in terms of transportation, if you don't have to go so far, of course you can walk or you can go by train instead of taking a plane. And if you can go by bike, it's also, of course, a very good action. If it comes to cars, it's still a question what kind of cars are available and what kind of infrastructure we have in a country. And so on one hand, there are hybrid cars, so they run with gas and with electric power, but the problem is that after 30 or 40 kilometers, the electric power is gone, and then they switch back to normal gas, so therefore for longer distances they are not so sustainable. Then there are electric cars, and so right now electric cars are really promoted as super sustainable, but the question is always, where does the energy come from, which is used to power the electric cars? So I come from Germany, and where we have more and more renewable energy. We have now about 46% renewable energy, but we still have more than 30% coal power. We still have nuclear power. So it's the energy mix and physical. It's always, even if we do a contract with renewable energy, it's always physically the energy mix which comes out of the grid. So if we power an electric car and a third of it's still coal power, then it's very polluting, it's not very sustainable at all. And also, if we have to manufacture a new car, of course, this also costs a lot of resources, and the old cars are maybe then sold to Eastern Europe, or if they are just thrown out. So then there are other options like LPG, which is liquefied petrol gas. This is a bit better than petrol, but it's still fossil fuel. Then there's CNG, which is compressed natural gas, which is more environmental friendly, but also for that there's not a huge infrastructure, and especially in film productions, if there's not a possibility really to refuel the car, then you cannot just use it. So it's always a question what kind of refill stations we have, and if they're not enough, nobody wants to buy the car. And the other way around is that the equipment companies, the rental companies, they don't want to really have cars if there's not an infrastructure with refill station. So this is why it's a kind of a hen and an egg problem. And what is also happening, there's a lot now development in terms of fuel cells. So in Germany, at least in northern Germany, we have a lot of renewable energy from wind power stations. And so with that you can produce green hydrogen. So hydrogen can also be produced in gray if it comes from the mix, or it can be produced if it's only from coal power, then it's brown hydrogen, but green hydrogen is very good and sustainable. And so right now the network of refill stations will be really widened. This is a declaration by politics, but this is different in every country. So if you're working on set, it's always the best solution that you take the energy from the grid instead of using a generator, because a generator is really very much polluting, and if there's not a directly access to the grid, sometimes it can be installed that you use this electric cabinets which are there on the street for construction sites, so you can rent that. Because the diesel generators, they are the cheapest solution, but in some cities in Germany, at least like Berlin or Cologne, they are even not allowed anymore. At some hours they are restricted because they are really polluting. And there's also a new regulation by the European Commission that it's a new generators which are built, they have to fulfill a new standard called Phase 5. But since January this year, only this new type of diesel generators can come on the market, but it's still allowed to sell the ones who were manufactured in 2018. But the real problem is that most of the companies, the rental companies, they have very old diesel generators, and they are around since 30, 40 or 50 years, and but they are still working, and everybody can still operate them. There is no regulation to forbid it, and why should a company buy a new generator and invest 200,000 euros if they can rent out the old one? So this is a problem. But there are also new solutions developed. This is a mobile hybrid battery. This is a pilot developed also by a German company. So this is a trailer, and it can be charged by the grid, and it only has a diesel generator as a backup, and so the power is 100 kV, so you can really power a whole film set with it. Then another company, they developed a huge battery which can then be repowered by the grid, but as a battery, then with LPG and even with photovoltaic. But the capacity of this battery is about 24 kV. And there are also smaller solutions. This is also fuel cell, but this is powered with methanol. So this is really for documentaries, or you can set up a camera in the green to watch some birds. But in the meantime, there's also a European project where they are working on fuel cells, generators, which will be powered with hydrogen. And so this is going to be introduced next year. There are further innovations around, like this is a caravan, which has just some photovoltaic in it to generate some energy. And, but there's another innovation also from Germany, from the Fraunhofer Institute, together with a company. They worked out a very cool innovation because they created a photovoltaic foil, and this foil is very thin, and it is the same like a solar panel. So it's a photovoltaic soil, but the advantage is you can put this foil anywhere. You can put it at a wall of buildings, and it can generate a lot of energy there. So it's much more flexible, and also the advantage is it's much lighter, because a solar panel which you put on the roof, it has an average, if you also have to count the weight of the snow which come out, you have to calculate that the roof has to carry 25 kilos per square meter. And not every building can really hold so much weight. And this innovation with this foil photovoltaic, it's completely new. The factory has just been built a couple of months ago, and so they have some pilot projects, but it has not been sold yet. So I think anybody of you is already aware of LED lights, which are very efficient, so they save up to 70% of the energy. And also in film production, there are various LED lights. The availability is in some regions and countries still a problem, but whenever there are new lights purchased, then a lot of companies, they are buying LEDs, and there are also regulations that in terms of eco-design, this has to be done. And there are also small practical solutions. This is a carpet light. This is a solution where this very tiny LEDs are really put in a fabric, and this thing, it can be really bended and squeezed and put with tape anywhere to lighten out, and this all comes in a peli case, so it's very small, and but it's also available in different sizes. Starts from just like this up to really 6 to 6 meters. So this is a very good solution if you really want to shoot quick, and you can light a car with it and so on. And of course, we can always work with available light. This is how it started. The first film studios were glass studios, like from Georges Méliès. And then it's also possible, if you have time and you sync the light, that you use reflectors or also foils that you can direct the light. In terms of production design, it's crucial that you also think, how can you, if you buy or rent material, how can it be reused later on? So that means like maybe you should use screws instead of nails, because this is easier to buy used furniture, and also to rent props and later on donate them to art projects. And in production design, there are also solutions like styropor is very unsustainable. And these guys, they have invented a solution which is like an eco styropor. They are from New York. They are two biology students, and they made an invention that they have side products from agriculture, like straw or something, and you mix it with mycelium, and then you bake it like a cake, and it grows and grows, and after 3 days you heat it up, you put it in the stove, and then you have it in what kind of form. So they started with surfboards and lamps and small things, and now they're even building real walls. So it's amazing, and this can be 100% composted here. I understand your question. It can be used for production design. I mean, you can do anything with it. The intention was not particular to use it for set designers, because the problem is you have to prepare it, and so you have to have a stove, and so you would have to do it in advance. But if you do decoration and you think about it, then you could use it, and of course, you can also resell it. I mean, the thing about sustainability is also being really creative if there's enough time to do it. And it's also possible that people can use then and sell the props and using it as marketing possibilities for the project. And if there's a film with a certain theme or of a certain time, people might get interested. But this here, Ecovative, you can also look it up. Then if we are talking about catering, catering is always something which is discussed very emotionally, because food is so important for people on set. So there are really a lot of discussions. Could we have a meatless day, yes or no? Or should we go vegetarian or even vegan? What in the end counts, I think it's the quality of the food, that it tastes good. And but meat has, of course, a huge carbon footprint. It's with all the supply chain and the toxic side effects. So it has really even a bigger impact than all the flights, the whole meat production. And the food should be really purchased from the region or locally, if any possible, and organ food. But this is a little bit more expensive, but you can do it if you save money in other departments. And then it's also an issue, a lot of film sets, they have a lot of food and then it's thrown out, and food waste is not sustainable at all. So it's also a matter of calculating how much do we really need, how much do we really eat. And also, do we really need chocolate wrapped up in plastic? Maybe it's better to have fresh fruits. Maybe it's even also better for the bodies of the people. And regarding the discussion of should we eat meat or not, Last year at the Berlin Film Festival, there was a documentary which was executive produced by James Cameron. This movie was called Game Changers and was a film about vegan people. So the New York Fire Department and Brooklyn, they are all vegan now, and even a guy who's the strongest man in the world who can lift an entire car, he is a vegan. And then they also examined people and went to doctors. And because on film sets, there's always the argument that gaffers say, well, I have to carry so much heavy stuff, that's why I need my meat, it's really crucial. But in this film, they proved that even that a vegan diet gives people more power than eating meat. And they made a very funny experiment. So they had 3 guys at the same age, 30-something. One was put on a normal meat diet, and one was vegetarian, and the third one was a vegan. And after a couple of days, they went to the doctor, and he measured their night erections. And then they found out that the meat-eating guy, he was a loser, the vegetarian was mediocre, and the vegan guy was a winner. So this might be an argument maybe for some gaffers. So on set, you also need energy, you need to cook, you need to keep the food warm. So this is also possible if you don't have to let a diesel generator run just for a coffee machine. It's also possible to power it with gas. There are even gas coffee machines available. And then, of course, avoiding waste is a very crucial point. So no single-use plastic should be used, and so all the waste, of course, should be then managed. In costume design, it's also good if you can find used clothes and resell or donate it or repair old things. The fashion industry has really also a tremendous footprint because it really leads to a lot of waste, to pollution, to deforestation, and there's a lot of toxicity in the manufacturing process. And because of all this carbon fuel supply chain, because the fashion goes all over the world. There is this institute, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. This is this institute which published 2 years ago the study that by 2050 we will have more plastics than fish in the ocean. And they did a study also on fashion with the result that every second truckload of clothing is wasted. And so the footprint of the fashion industry is 1.2 billion a year. So reusing clothes is something which is crucial in production, but also in private lives. So then, of course, besides reusing clothes, it's good to wash them with biodegradable detergent. In makeup, it's also a question, what is it? What kind of cream or makeup people are putting on their skin? Because our body is really the house where we are living in for our entire life. And if we are using products which are really toxic, there are in some creams, even luxury products, there is microplastic in and other toxic things. And it's possible to track all that. There is an internet platform, it's called Code Check, so C-O-D-E and then check. And if you enter a product there, you really see what's in there. And so it shows you in a circle which is green, which is yellow, or which is red, what kind of product. So in film production, it's also possible to use products with has organic components from plants or herbs or so. But of course, it's also a discussion with the DOP, since everybody is shooting 4K now and there's a requirement for Netflix, what kind of makeup can we use and how safe is it really for the camera? These are all issues that have to be really discussed and proved. Yeah, in terms of waste management, there are also regulations. We all have in Europe the requirement to go towards circular economy. In nature, there is no waste. Everything can be really reused, and we have to come back to this point too. That means, first of all, then there are higher recycling quotes. So every region and country, and sometimes every local community, has different laws how paper, glass, plastic, metal, organic, electronic waste and batteries should be recycled. But we have to do it, and so it really requires also to think much more about it, what is really waste and what can be reused. So wood, for example, from a film, it can be really collected, but you just have to collect it, and if the waste is not managed, then it's more difficult to do the recycling process. So talking about post-production, requires much more time of a production than the production itself, because post-production goes on for many, many months often. The problem is also that in film production is linked to financing, and producers really go where the money is. So in Switzerland, for example, a production manager told that they were shooting a film in Switzerland, but they did the sound mix in Berlin because it was much cheaper there. So 20 times they just were flying back and forth to Berlin all the time, just because of saving the money, because flights are costing not so much, and so it was still cheaper to do this. This is why it's really crucial that we need a carbon tax, because if carbon costs a lot of money, flights prices will go up, and then things like this won't be happen. Or we would have to set up rules that everything has to be more local. Not only the production has to be more local, but also the post-production. But of course, these are also all political decisions. What can be done in post-production to be more energy efficient is you can use rendering power. So there's a studio in Paris, they are heating the entire office just with rendering the heat of the computers, and this is a system which has been then built up, and now there are more than 200 apartments in Paris just heated with rendering power of computers. And there's another company, they are just having a data center, and with the render power, they are heating a public swimming pool in Paris. So this is really impressive, and this is a company who is doing it. It's called Stimergy, and they told me that everybody who has a rendering center could, of course, do it. Then, of course, you can do post-production on set in a van. It always depends really also on the size of production and what you're gonna do. Then you don't have the transportation. And this is a project in Poland. They have a called Cinebus from a university where everything is in one bus. But the bus is still running with diesel, so they have also to change that. But it's a project which is built on. Yeah, I think now we can have our conversation with our colleagues from Mallorca and Trentino. Are they already on? I hope they will be there very, very soon. We are going to talk to Luca Ferrario, who's the project manager of the Trentino Film Commission and Film Fund, and also to Pedro Barbadillo, who is the managing director of the Mallorca Film Commission and Film Fund. And so both film funds and film commissions are working on Mallorca Film Commission and Film Fund. And so both film funds and film commissions are working on Mallorca Film Commission and Film Fund. And so both film funds and film commissions are working on Mallorca Film. Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Hi, Pedro. Hi, Luca. How are you? Good to see you.
Hi. Good to see you.
Hi, Pedro. Hi, Luca. How are you? Good to see you.
Hello?
Here, could you
well,
stop the streaming, please? Because I guess you're watching the streaming.
Maybe I have to do another. Okay.
I cut my streaming.
Yeah, now I think now it works. Great, fantastic. My first question goes to Pedro. Pedro, you already started in 2015 to organize workshops on sustainability. So what is the situation in Mallorca? How green is film production already, and what are the difficulties and obstacles?
So, good morning. Well, we started actually in 2016 with a seminar where we invited you as an expert on green shooting around Europe, and the representative of Hamburg Film Commission. And it was very interesting for our producers locally and also for our institutions, because there were also technicians from the environmental area and others. And then we followed with a few other meetings, a few other workshops. In 2017, we had one with 2018 with Emily O'Brien from Earth Angels in New York. That was very interesting also for producers. And this year we did the first meeting on local catering with a lot of catering companies working for the film industry, and also the Association of Local Products. In fact, the service production companies on the island are using more or less green measures in their shootings, not on an organized way as could be, as our colleague from Trentino will tell afterwards, but they are very committed with it. They signed a letter this year, both associations, the associations of content producers and the Association of Service Producers, committing with green film measures. And our project is that from 2020, we will start to implement a protocol that is now under discussion at an international level as a way to do green shooting in a more structured way.
Okay. Luca, we have been talking about saving resources, saving money. You also support productions by providing them with an eco-consultant so they can apply for an eco-bonus. And how is it? Are production really saving money? So you had already a couple of green productions in Trentino. What are your experiences with that?
Okay. Hi, and hello to everybody, first of all. I'm actually still hearing the voice of Pedro in the back. I don't know why, but can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay. As you know, we started a couple of years ago giving some extra money to producers through the Film Fund because we thought that was the way to start breaking the ice and thinking about different ways to work on set. So we decide to propose this tool, this system, and to propose it to producer as a free choice, and to give an award to the ones that decide to try. So we did that because we know there are some extra money you need to spend if you want to work in a more sustainable way. But this thing is changing. Years ago, an hybrid car was more expensive. A few years ago, to have a catering service with composable forks and dishes was difficult and more expensive. Now those things are getting cheaper and cheaper, so the difference is not that big anymore. But at the same time, you still have the saving you have on set. Like, of course, if you don't buy tons of plastic bottles, you save money. Of course, if you use more the electric generator, the electric grid, electric plug-in in the grid, you save a lot of money instead of generators. So let's say that a few years ago, it was still a little bit more expensive. Now it's getting less and less expensive, and you really start saving a lot of money. But still, I think that it's important for film funds and institutions to give some kind of incentive to push this kind of changes.
You are really lucky because in Trentino, in these areas, there's also renewable energy and water power and so on. But you also set up, with the eco-bonus, you set up some regulations like that everybody has to really put up the people for the accommodation really near the set. So you started with about a circle of 10 kilometers where the people have to stay. So how did this work out? What kind of experience did you make with this?
But, like I said, we propose a list of actions. You cannot do all of them in every film, of course, but a producer can check them, see them, and understand what it's affordable for them. And most of the time, we ask, for instance, for a mobility plan. So you write at the beginning of the shooting a mobility plan. So you need to spend some time in planning all the transportation, and that sounds very easy, very obvious. It's actually not, because they realized there were different ways to save time and money on transportation. And another thing is having an hotel not too far from the set, because sometimes you move away from the set because you find a cheaper hotel, but at the end you will spend more time and money for transportation. So the very important thing is to have a sustainability plan at the very beginning of the shooting. If you do this, you already did half of the work.
So, I mean, the requirements are always the same to reduce energy, to reduce transportation and so on. But of course, the situation in every country and every region is often very different. So, Pedro, the model Luca has really implemented in Trentino, is this something which also could work for Mallorca, or maybe partly? Or are you considering to adapt something of it, or you have an own model in development?
No, we think that it is important to apply these kind of models that have been already tested in other regions. And I think the Trentino Green Film scheme is very practical, very applicable. And in fact, we have discussed to use it as our standard for the next year. At the same time, it's also interesting to know that there is a discussion in which both Luca and me are participating with the European Commission to try to set up general standards for a basic general standard for Europe that can be applied for any territory, because there are questions that are similar to one and another. Energy, transportation, catering, materials, waste are probably the same issues in every country. Maybe there are local questions that can be applied in a different way, but as a general standard, I think this green film project, or this green film rating system developed in Trentino, is very, very practical and very useful. And there are also other territories using it now. I think that it would be a good idea to start with this one.
Yeah, I think we do need a standard, because also often in feature film production there are a lot of co-productions, because there's not enough money just in one country. And so if we have different standards in different regions and different countries and it comes to a co-production, then producers will freak out completely if they have to require different things in one production. Therefore, a European-wide standard is really crucial, and we already see that in terms of carbon calculators, where we have different carbon calculators all over Europe, and so the results are really different and are really depending what kind of tools we measure. Or like in Great Britain, it's not an option to calculate the catering with their carbon calculator, for example. So I think on any level, it's really crucial that we will have really one standard for everything. Luca, maybe you want to explain a little bit the point system, how it works, just briefly, that people get an idea?
Yeah, sure. We have this rating system that is called green film. I can show it like this. This is the logo. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? Oh.
Yeah, we can see it.
And there is a website that is www.green.film, where everything is explained way better than what I can do. But in a few words, we propose this list of actions to producer, but together with the action, we also explain how everything will be verified. And it's a very simple way to verify things. And we put a minimum that needs to be reached in order to be certified. And we have a partnership with our local agency for the environment protection that is in charge of the verification. They go to on set once, and then they ask for some evidence at the end of the film in order to check if all the actions that were planned to do were actually made, and if the producer did everything that he promised, he received a certification. Of course, I forgot to say at the very beginning of this process, the producer applied to our film fund and expressed is willing to be certified, and it tells us how many of these actions he will be able to make during this shooting. So it's a list of 50 points. So he can say, for instance, I can reach 32, 36, 40, depends on the film. So we take this thing into the evaluation grid. So during the project evaluation, we give some extra points because of this green thing, which of course means some extra money.
Sorry, there's a limit. So it's not the more you go green, the more money you get. There's a cap, right?
Yeah, of course. There's a cap of 10,000 euros, which is not a way to pay producer to work in a more sustainable way, because that won't be the right choice. It's just a small award and a small help in covering some expenses, and a way to catch their interest and start thinking about how they can handle the set in a more sustainable way. And I think it's working very well, because it's a small amount compared to a film budget, but so far we had more than 50% of the application requesting for this. So it means that producers are really willing to try if they have clear instructions, clear rules.
Yeah, and I think with 10,000 euros, this is not the amount of money that the people are only going for the money. So the producers are obviously interested in really going green. Because on one hand, there's a possibility that you can link the money to a production, that you say you get a bonus like in Trentino, or they also do it in the region of Paris, that you get extra money when you go green. Or the other possibility is that you get the money only if you go green, that what they're doing in Belgium and Flanders, where they link the requirements to the film fund, that producers, they have to attend a green workshop, and then they also have to set up a carbon calculation and deliver their carbon footprint to the film fund. And if this is done, then they will get the last installment of the money, which is 50 or 60,000 euros, depending on the production. So this is more, you get the money only if you go green, or you get extra money if you go green. These are the two different approaches. So Pedro, the approach you want to take is you want to also attract producers to go green with extra money, or what is your idea?
Well, our idea is to improve a system that in the first level gives the producers more accessibility to permits and to some benefits on the shooting, and then to include it in a second stage on the evaluation systems for producing. I think we are now in a stage of getting this issue on a more ideological way, and in the future it has to become a standard like it is any other kind of standards in not only in film production but also in any kind of activity. So to become a premium on the financial side is a good way to speed this process, but there is also another way that maybe will take it longer, but it will not be just because of the money. I think 2020 is a crucial year for this kind of questions. It was the data that was set up for arriving to a certain level of reduction, and everybody is more or less concerned about this. I see the difference mainly between the service productions and the content production companies. The service production companies work for other companies, for clients, mainly big producers, international producers, and they are not as free to set up these kind of measures because their international clients are hiring them for the production. Sometimes are trying to get better prices for them. And if implementing green measures means a higher cost, they will not be able to do it directly. But I think in the first stage it would be just a question of implementing measures. In the second one, also to rewarding these measures through financial benefits.
Okay.
Of course, there are. Now, I would like to say that, of course, there are differences between different regions, different territories. In some place, you need to maybe to give more money if you want to change something. In other countries, maybe you can already make it as a mandatory thing. It depends. I think every territory needs to think about the situation and fix a kind of process. We started from proposing this thing as a choice and to give some money extra. But one day, if things start working better and people get used to this, maybe we won't give any extra money anymore. And maybe later on, it will become mandatory. It depends. It's a kind of process, and every region needs to start in the right spot according to what's going on in that region.
Yes, for instance, I wanted to add, for instance, we have here in Mallorca a very complex system of waste management. There are 5 different wastes, like in any other country. At the beginning, waste management in the set was a question that the producers can choose. Now it is not something that they can choose. They have to follow the regulations on place. And I think, as Luca is pointing out, maybe in a future it will become a standard that is mandatory or accepted by anybody.
Yes, of course, because waste management is already, I mean, there are European waste management regulations and they have to be implemented in national law. And so in Germany, since August 2017, we do have a regulation on waste management that every company, no matter what kind of business they are in, they have to, if they are producing more than 50 kilograms of waste in 1 week, they do have to manage it really into the different waste streams, and they also have to document it once. And if they don't do it, they have to, they can be charged fees up to 100,000 euros. And I mean, in Italy, for example, it's controlled. I saw it that in Rome, the police was really searching garbage bins at night, and they are giving out fees if the waste management has not been taken care of in a correct way. But of course, the more important thing is also to avoid waste in the first place, and then so recycle what is left over. But I think we have to go on time-wise. So thank you very, very much, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Okay, thank you, Birgit, and congratulations for the job you are doing. We think, or I think at least, that it is a very encouraging process.
Thank you, Pedro.
Yeah, I agree with Pedro. I agree with Pedro, and thank you very much, and thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, thank you too, Luca. So have a great day.
Bye, bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye for now. So now we can switch again to, yes. So now I will just talk a bit about green cinema, what it is. So I produced the Green Cinema Handbook, and which is in German right now, but I'm also working on an English version because there's a lot of interest what cinemas can do. And I took the approach that I searched in 4 major topics: energy efficiency, renewables, concession, and waste management. And so my approach was to look into measures what cinemas exhibitors already have to do in terms of law, then what they can do, and then what kind of measures which already have been taken. And by doing that, I found out there are a lot of European regulations in different fields, like energy efficiency. So there's a law which is regarding buildings, that by 2050 all the buildings should be carbon neutral in Europe. And so right now the situation is that buildings are consuming more than a third of all energy in Europe. So they are generating a third of the emissions due to heating, cooling, and lightening of the facilities. Lightening, of course, it's also something needs a lot of energy, and then another field is eco-design. So there are also regulations for this, how electrical devices are manufactured. We all know that nowadays we buy something, and after 2 years, when the guarantee has just ended, something breaks and it cannot be repaired anymore. So eco-design means that also devices have to be manufactured in a way that they will have a longer life and be much more sustainable. And but there are also rules for electric appliances, for ventilation systems, which is a crucial point for cinemas. Then, of course, the use of renewables, but also the quality of drinking water, the ban of plastic, and then recycling also of waste and of electrical and electronic equipment. So just to give you an example, this is just a photo of a ventilation system of HAVC. So this is also a law since a couple of years, a ventilation system which is built in nowadays. It has to have heat recovery. That means if we have a hall like here and then there's a ventilation, then the heat, it's just not going outside in the air, but it's really recovered by metal spirals. There are the different systems, but so the heat can be saved and come back. And so there's not so much need of heating. And with a good ventilation systems, cinemas can really cut down their heating cost, sometimes really half of the entire costs. If it comes to renewables, we get the energy from the grid, but of course it's really crucial to sign up a contract that somebody will provide us with renewable energy, because with our demand, and there are more windmills built and more water power stations. So the demand for renewable is really very crucial. But whenever we get energy, it's just the mix of energy what we get. If we want to make sure that we really have 100% renewable energy to power our cinema, we really have to generate it by ourselves. So this is a cinema in the UK, the Depot Cinema in Lewes, and they are doing quite a few things regards of sustainability. And so they have heat ground source pumps to heat the building, and they do have photovoltaic, which you can see here on the roof, to generate their electric energy. And so this is of course always an investment, but after a couple of years it pays off. And so if we are thinking more in the future, and you think about this photovoltaic soil, which I mentioned before, you could even put this soil at some of the walls and then generate even more electric energy with that. So in terms of concession, it depends really on the cinema, what the situation is. In big multiplex cinemas, you have a lot of single-use plastic, and in one multiplex cinema on average, there are up to 1 million paper cups, which are really sold over the course of a year, which is a lot of waste. While in smaller art house cinemas, it's more normal to serve drinks in glass bottles and in glasses. So of course you can also try to sell more healthy food at the concession stand, such as nuts or better quality of ice cream or fruits. Everything is possible. And this is a very small cinema, Cinema P it's called, in a little town in Bavaria. And so they are following this philosophy of unpacked food. So everything, all the sweets which are offered there, they're coming there unpacked, and the visitors, they are bringing their own little cups and so on to buy it, and so they don't have any plastic package. But of course, this is maybe not a solution for every cinema. It really depends. But also exhibitors are really creative people and can adapt solutions and do something in a different way, and just not to use so much plastic. It's a regulation anyway, sooner or later, so they should become creative and figure out new solutions. So yeah, waste management, it is a big problem. We all know the pictures of the oceans full of plastic, but there are also a lot of products where we think they are maybe sustainable and better, and they are not. So if it comes to cups, the paper cups, they are made of paper, but the problem is they are not only made out of paper. In order to keep the liquid, the hot coffee, into the cup, there has to be a coating in a cup, and this coating, this is made of PP and PE, so it's a polyethylene and it's polypropylene, and these kind of plastics, so they prevent the hot liquid from going off. But in terms of recycling, it means these kind of paper cups, they cannot be recycled because it would take too much energy and water consumption to put the paper apart from these plastic elements. Therefore, all these paper cups can be only burned, but often they are paper cups sold and like they are green and they can be recycled, but in most of the cases this is just not true. And by doing a lot of research, I found out that there are a lot of products sold as green, but they are not as green as they should be. For example, they are bamboo cups, which also contain plastics, or they are plates made out of palm trees, and these palm trees, they are coming from the areas where cutting the trees for the palm oil, where all the orangutangs get killed, and so also there's a lot of pesticides. So these plants are very polluted, and then they are transported in containers from Asia, and then they are even mixed with plastic, and then they are sold on the internet as very sustainable and green compostable dishes. So there's a lot of greenwashing because now green is sexy, and a lot of companies also think it's a good opportunity to make money. That's why we always have really to look into things and really carefully think, what is the whole life cycle of a product? Where does it come from? How is it produced? What kind of resources does it require to produce a project? What is the footprint in terms of transportation? Does it come from the other part of the world? And what is also the life of a product in terms of using time? So a coffee to-go cup has just a life of 15 minutes in average, and a cup in a cinema is just there for about the length of a movie, and then it's thrown out. So this is why we have to really find solutions to do things in a different way. Of course, this can be also good for communication, and this can be communicated to the cinema goers. So I hope that everyone will get some inspiration and think about what we can do in a better way. So thank you for your attention. bought some magazines. I will put them out here so you can pick up a green film shooting magazine. So I just take them off. I forgot to say that.
Thank you, Virgil.
Deputy Director General for Promotion of International Relations at the ICAA, and he was also Secretary General at the National Authority for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons at the Spanish Ministry of Science and Technology, and Director General for Quality and Environmental Assessment at the Spanish Ministry of the Environment, and Vice President of the European Environment Agency. Thank you very much for coming all the way.
Buen día a todas y a todos. Muchas gracias por venir.
Very much for coming. Hello, everyone. I am very fortunate because I have two presentations, one now and then another one at the debate. This will allow me to use one of my contradicting nature features. It's basically those of us who are a bit schizophrenic. So in this first part, I will give you a very programmatic presentation projects that we are mobilizing at the IACC, and then in the second presentation of the debate, I hope I can be a bit more critical with some proposals that are quite ambitious. I get the feeling, or I have the feeling, that somehow the audiovisual and filmmaking world is the last to get into environmental sustainability. And this is surprising because it's supposed to be a very advanced world and that goes at the forefront all the time. I'm going to talk about the entire value chain, although I will focus more on production, where we can find more specific things to analyze. I think that the audiovisual and filmmaking sector has nature of a role model. Neo in Matrix says that only viruses and humans are capable of destroying their own habitat. We are that special. We're not only going to talk about the creating component, but also an industrial and business perspective. We'll talk about energy efficiency, resources, and some things that are beneficial for the industry from the financial standpoint, but not only what is beneficial, the savings that we can have if we consume less. This is also necessary to implement policies and environmentally sustainable actions. Even those that may seem expensive now are necessary, because the concept of sustainable development since 1986, Dr. Brundtland established it. It's based on balance, 3 pillars: social, economic, and social pillars. So the business world and the paradigm of capitalism took this on in their favor, saying, well, that's fine, it's perfect. Great corporation said we need to find a balance between the social aspect, the environmental aspect, and the economic aspect. So whenever something is costly, there is an imbalance and we don't apply it. No, there's always actions that can be taken, better technologies that are available that may seem more expensive or may be more expensive, but we have the obligation to present them. As you know, currently we talk about the 3 Ps: planet, people, and profit. Planet, people, and profit in Spanish. I don't totally agree with these 3 Ps. I think that we need to put 2 together. So planet, people, profit. So planet, comma, people, profit. So the profit of precisely through the non-application of better or best technologies available. So the discourse of economic profitability needs to be opposed to austerity or the application of some things that may be costly now but will be beneficial in the future. There's no problem to apply. All the matters I will be talking about is just a matter of time. Spain is the 10th country in the world, in the number of millionaires, and we are the 24th in the compliance of the Sustainable Development Goals. I think there is capacity enough for us to be at the very top. So our focus needs to be not capitalist at all. They're all different, the things I will be talking about today. One of the basic principles used in sustainability is that those who pollute pay for it, and this has been transformed to the following: those who pay pollute. If we look at the CO2 emissions, well, those who can acquire the rights of emissions of those who do not emit those contaminants, they do, and they continue contaminating and polluting. I will be talking about matters that are related to things that need to be applied. We will talk about the industrial component, energy efficiency, and also we'll talk about the creative component and social image component. I will go in deeper into critical aspects more in the debate later on, as we said, with some controversial things. I see Carlota here from the General Office. We'll talk about tourism and filmmaking, if they're compatible, how they can be compatible. So impactful information. There's a lot. The idea that a standard film produces 73 tons of CO2, well, it's like 10 houses. 40% will come from transportation, and we then identify some things where we need to have an effect on. 5% energy, 20% because of waste. In a standard film, 16,000 plastic cups are used in the catering. The CO2 emissions are 8%, and post-production 18%, with the difficulties of the reduction of ecologic impact in the post-production phase, as we will see later on. And then things such as the following: in any business sector, the impact of the rental versus purchase is 4 times cheaper and 4 times more sustainable to rent than to buy. So sharing resources in a non-capitalist vision of the business movement. So I started talking about CO2, and you'll see that I'm totally against the CO2 dictatorship. We now turn everything into CO2, and if I say I have my carbon footprint, I have my calculator, I'm going to roast a few flights on a plane, I'm happy with that. No, the environment and environmental sustainability is much more than CO2. CO2 is very important. The thing it had is that it placed the environmental problem on the public agenda. 20 years ago, only some of us spoke about this, a few madmen. But environment is much more than CO2. Environment is the quality of air, which is not CO2, NOx, and particulates. There's the occupation of public land, the degradation of species, noise. So I will try to talk about it like this. I don't have a lot of time, so... And Patricia is looking at me to see how you can take me down from here. Anyway, I'll tell you very quickly, because many things we've already spoken about. What do we think, or are we thinking about doing in the ICAA? Next year, we want to approve a manual for best practices in the film industry that includes all the value chain from the production or pre-production, production and post-production, or shooting and post-production, distribution, marketing, and exhibition, knowing how difficult this is in the allocation of competencies. The ICAA doesn't own the exhibition phase, that is owned by the different autonomies. But the structure in this manual, which is almost finished, is to do an analysis of the industry per activities and processes, pre-production, location, shooting, and post-production, including the best possible technologies in all of them. So the person who works in an industry doesn't have to know what is the most avant-garde technology in lighting. So if we include MTDs, we facilitate access. We will talk about good practices and environmental aspects per activity with the different activities that we have at hand. So, in pre-production, we will establish a chapter where we talk about locations. In production or shooting, the essential thing for us is, or are not only the active measures that we will propose for the reduction of pollution and contamination and impact, also the need to have a technician for environmental management within the filmmaking companies. This morning we said this clearly, this is an expense. Well, a few years ago we suddenly said that all companies had to have a technician in labor technology or work technology, and they all have it now in a company. So in a company, whether it's the filmmaking company or in the financial sector, it's absolutely necessary to have an environmental manager who is responsible for environmental surveillance, general impacts in Red Natura 2000, to have an impact on each one of the films. Well, we have a film that is covering the entire value chain from the creator to marketing. We will have to have a comprehensive plan forcing everyone to measure the impact of each one of the activities we will be performing, the subsequent impact with compensation measures. So after a shooting, maybe I can clean everything up and I can plant 14,000 trees, depending on what our production is. Fast and Furious in the Canary Islands is not the same as having a small production up in the mountain. And in shooting processes, having a daily activity plan. As for shootings, this comprehensive plan, well, it's all about planning basically, is to see how it affects water and the soil, special sequences of fires, flooding, and all the special effects. Having minimum occupation of public soil. Shooting may be covering 3 different streets when it's not even necessary. Same thing happens in the environment. In the building up of a threat, so there would be better technologies and best use for art directors with the acquisition of all the wood with wood certificates and minimize their water use, paint, solvents, glues, minimize the use of dust, and the management of waste, including the obligations of Royal Decree of construction and demolition. This is not applied to the cinematographic industry or film industry, but it should be used. Lighting, well, applying regulation of ecologic design of the EU, which establishes alternatives against which the film industry has positioned itself against. Why? Because the specific lighting of theaters and cinemas is complicated and expensive, and the industry is trying, as the chemical industry and textile industry, well, they're trying to delay this, but they shouldn't promote the substitution of light generators with works generators. This is essential. We cannot go to cities and use generators with CO2 emissions, particulates, and NOx. We need to establish, and in order to do this, we need to convince the entire public administration chain that when we do some works, construction works on a building, 14 floors in the middle of the city, and no one uses generators, they connect to the grid. Same thing should be done. They should be done through a tariff to connect to the grid. So minimize the use of water and scripts. This is all in the Handbook of Good Practices. So management of waste, use of natural cosmetics, and having people of the crew staying close to the locations, protection of locations and the local environment, implement the daily plan, and doing documentation of the before and the after of our activity. As I've said, one of the essential aspects of impact generation is mobility, and for this we need to perform efficient driving plans, so the different routes. This seems very basic, but we've applied this many years ago in the driving of deliveries in cities. Of course, the routes, they stop the engine when they unload the boxes. So studying of routes in supplies and in shootings, noise, occupation of public soil. This is one of my obsessions. And preventive maintenance. The more preventive maintenance we do of our fleet, the better it will be. As for catering, trying to save up in food and beverage and packaging, it is very sad to see all the waste in catering. So doing waste management, this is complicated because in some places you need to fulfill some requirements, so there's no cross-contamination in the delivery of the food, but there are solutions.
Solutions are to incorporate the delivery of food to the homeless, incorporated into the delivery system. And in this way, they guarantee this food can be taken there. It's not as if we go ourselves and they don't know if they can accept it or not. We have to introduce it in the regular chain of distribution. Procurement management, avoiding waste. And in procurement, just like in the public administration, we started to apply responsible and green procurement. Well, responsible and procurement with criteria of austerity, with social and local responsibility via hiring local people, and activities that are not just the filming, also maintenance and things that are very much introduced in regulations such as ISO 9001 and others. And in other areas which are not just the filming, for example, in the development, we believe that, in the development department, we believe that if in the coming years we were to take back the ICAA grants for other purposes, for example, a points system for films that promote a change of environmental paradigm, paradigm switch, that would be very good. Or in production and marketing, for example, all of the films spend around €500,000 in P&A. So, or the posters, for example, used on the streets, this type of roll-ups or whatever name we want to give this thingy, they can be made of recyclable materials and they could be recyclable themselves. Some of us use wallets, and this wallet is made of tires, and it looks good on top of that. So all of those signs and posters, if we plan ahead, I don't buy my poster and then I just use it and throw it away. No, as a producer, I can incorporate into my plan the contact with a company which will buy this from us and will reuse it in other activities. So all of these good practices handbook that we want to apply, we believe will generate opportunities, will generate savings, and our idea is that in this very manual, there will be little by little first a process of or a period of self-regulation of the industry. The industry can say, okay, with this handbook of good practices, I can make a statement saying I am following them. So you can access the rating and the grants given by the ICA. And in this very manual, we will promote the creation of a green screen label or certification for responsible filmmaking. And then whatever body can certify it, INOR or whatever other body, and these will give you points that are valid for requesting grants, but that cannot be the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal should be that these organizations with a paradigm shift should not only think of using these solutions to earn some points. No, it should end up being compulsory in such a way that in due time. No request for grants, be it grants for distribution, organization of festivals, or production of cinema in Spain, can have or can receive official aid, at least from ICA, without meeting the standards established in this green filming certification. And just to finish, the big threat here is the reluctance to change, prejudice, and fake data of impact. In all of the industries where I've worked in green aspects, when you make something compulsory, people start saying it will be awful, I will have to fire 500 people, but it's been researched all over the world, and the Porter hypothesis says that more green regulations generate more innovation, more efficiency, and more benefits, not just social benefits, which are the ones that matter, but also benefits and profit in companies and generation of other jobs. Maybe some jobs will be lost, but we will generate the jobs of, for example, environmental technicians for filmmaking, which we believe is essential. And I will finish. I believe that I seem to be talking about the future, but we need to act now. I've seen people talk about reluctances of some stakeholders in the business industry of filmmaking, the audiovisual industry. But I think this is a must. What's strange is that it is already 2019 and this has not been applied. Mr. Tomby said that delaying the challenges of reality just leads us to the consequences of making the inevitable more costly. Sustainability is inevitable, and the sooner we all start, companies, citizens, governments, the sooner we will tackle this challenge, this real challenge we're facing. Thank you very much.
So, hello again. Now, Jaime, you can stay here. And now we will have a panel discussion on green production. So this is Carlotta from Catalonia. and Susan, and Juan, and Eva. And is Valerie coming too? Hi, Valerie. Welcome. Okay, so I think after this very use him myself just briefly. So what is your relation to sustainability? You start, Carlotta?
Okay, thank you. Is this working? Well, thank you, La Alternativa, and thank you, Birgit, for inviting us to be on this panel. I'm Carlota Guerrero. Shall I do this in English? What? No, Español? Well, I'll do it, I don't know. I'm from the Catalunya Film Commission. The Catalunya Film Commission is a service of the Catalan Institute for Cultural Companies, and we serve all sectors of culture. And from ICEC, the institute where the Catalunya Film Commission belongs, we have been working on issues of sustainability since 2017. My colleague Laia there was among the first ones to promote the interest for sustainability amongst the cultural sectors. And as a film commission, we joined them later in 2018, creating an opening up debate, which we think is important, or was important 2 years, 1 year ago. I think we are now in a new phase. I think the debate, the raising of awareness is over now. We are sitting here to discuss things to be done. So basically, to sum up, we are part of the Catalan administration that takes care of the cultural sectors and the audiovisual amongst them. And we're also a link to the towns that receive film shoots in their territories. And it is our mission also to transfer this knowledge and to make it available to everyone to know how to deal in a more sustainable way with productions.
Jaime, you also already have a huge background in terms of sustainability. Even before you came to ICA, you did a lot of things. Please tell us.
Thank you so much. Well, if it's huge, it's because I'm old, and not because I'm wise, but nevertheless. Well, bueno, soy Jaime Alejandre, se ha dicho.
My name is Jaime Alejandre, it was said before. I'm Deputy General Manager of Promotion and International Relations at ICA, and I was General Manager of Quality Environmental Management and Vice President of the European Agency of the Environment. And one of my obsessions, one of the many obsessions that I have, is cross-sectionality in some policies that I worked in the past. When I started working at ICA, I discovered that the environmental aspects were at the very beginnings, and I thought it was essential to use my past experience to incorporate it. And I made the proposal of creating a handbook of good practices and incorporating environmental aspects into the entire value chain of filmmaking. And this is what we're working on.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Eva, what is your background? You are running a festival in Toulouse, and you also try to make it as sustainable as possible?
Yes. Hola, me llamo Eva.
Hello, my name is Eva. I work at a festival in Toulouse. It is Cine Latino, and it is a festival devoted to Latin America filmmaking. It has been happening for 32 years, and I'm also a member of CICAE, which is the International Confederation of Cinema Venues, and Carrefour de Festival, which is an association of French festivals. And in terms of sustainability or production, green production, we can say that the festival conducts certain actions, but the first step was done based on our own initiative of the members and volunteers who are involved in the organization. And this means that for several years now we've been conducting certain actions, but without them being included in a framework or without any institution asking us to do it. But I don't know, maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago, I think the region, l'Occitanie, created an eco-label, and they gave some advice, some recommendations, so we started implementing their recommendations. But reading the EcoProt guide, which is published on a French site, we realized that we were doing almost everything that was recommended in this guide without even knowing we were doing it, because this came out of our own awareness, and it came from our motivation and the fact that we do not want to throw things away. We do not want to generate useless waste, because we have a small budget, yes, but also we also receive public support. So we think it's very important not to generate useless waste, not to generate waste. So from the beginning, we tried to use, for example, second-hand computers, or to recuperate objects for the festival, sometimes from the street. I don't know, tables and the likes, and sharing our knowledge and expertise with other festivals. So the way we work is not official. We are in the dynamic of doing this sort of thing, but it's nothing official. But I think it's very important to share with others, with other events, to share our practices, or to, for example, adapt what is written in the code and to adapt it to the field of festivals. Because in festivals there are other questions as compared to production. And we also need to have tools to make good decisions, because I realized a short while ago that the impact, I realized what the impact of digital was. I became aware of the impact of the digital world, and for me, it was a shock. I was shocked into awareness. And then I thought, well, what can we do now? How can we communicate? Because we use the digital environment a lot. We use newsletters for communication, but we've seen they do have a great impact. And we thought we had a good balance, because digital meant saving a lot in terms of printing. So, well, we do things like that.
No, it is. So often we think that something, what we are doing, the actions are very sustainable, but maybe they are not. This is why we really have to look into something. And you just mentioned the ITC example, that all the information communication technology is really generating so many emissions due to the energy production, how the, like Joanna explained, how all the servers are powered and they consume so much energy. And of course there's a promotion that a paperless office is so much greener, and of course you have to cut trees in order to have paper, but you can recycle paper. Also this requires a lot of energy and water consumption, of course, and you have to do this de-inking process and so on. But on the other hand, you have to really compare also the hardware obsolescence of all the electronic devices, and which often don't have a second life. So after 2 years or so, tablets, smartphones are gone and so on. But sustainability itself, it's always a process. It's nothing you just do and you're there for 100%. So you have to learn and adapt and share best practices. And Susanna, you also have been in sustainability for many, many years in the US. Now you are distributing films.
Yes, hi, I'm Suzanne Harley. I am the founder of Green Planet Films, which is a nonprofit distributor of nature and environmental films. And our market is mainly schools and libraries. And I started this in San Francisco, California, which was, maybe seemed a little bit ahead of the game when it came to environmental issues. And so when I started in 2003, we started promoting in 2005 after building the website. And then those days, the media was DVD. This was before streaming. And also there was a lot of, print work, and there's catalogs and postcards and, just a lot of stuff, that you would need to store. And this is like, we're a small distributor, but the larger distributors, they would print thousands of DVDs and have pallets of DVDs, which also cost money for transportation. And the transportation of all this plastic to and from, like say the larger distributors would get orders of maybe 6,000, of one film for Walmart, and then 90 days later would return 4,000. And so distributors would need warehouses and forklifts and moving all these DVDs around. But luckily, streaming has kicked in to at least reduce the plastic waste. And I'll talk, on this panel more about sort of the new way that even movie studios are going, and we're certainly doing this, is called manufacture on demand. where you only print what you need. And so I will be addressing that as the panel goes on.
Valerie, you are a film producer, so do you already have expertise and experience in going green with productions?
Tenemos una conciencia.
Well, we have our individual awareness as producers, and then we have an intention to transfer this personal awareness into the entire collective, the entire sector. In the latest productions we've worked on, we have felt that there is a will to do things more sustainable, to make decisions in the private, taking what people do in their private life into the professional world, involving the entire team in those decisions. And it's also true that as a fiction and documentary producer, I see the difference between the impact in a fiction production versus a documentary. Documentaries are a lot more sustainable per se. In and of its own, it's not comparable. So these decisions we have applied mainly to fiction. For example, not printing, this is the most obvious choice. Although after Joanna's talk, I don't know what is obvious anymore. I thought we were doing things right, and it may not be the case in some areas. And then there are details. For example, trying to use public transportation instead of using our private vehicles or motorcycles. If you use the bike, that's fine, but other than that, give them a metro card, for example, to the staff so that they can move around instead of using their cars. And trying to use public transportation or car sharing, if we can share cars for certain rides, or giving them one of those reusable bottles, metal bottle, so we do not use plastic bottles on the set. We have not yet gotten to the levels you mentioned earlier, for example, heating with mobile phones or with electronic devices, heating the office with the rendering. We have not gotten that far. But there's an awareness and a will in each member of the crew and the team. Every one of us wants to bear this in mind, and this is what makes it feasible. But since we're not specialists, any suggestion we may receive from the institutions will be welcome as well. It is also true that producers are involved in marketing processes and distribution processes. And for a while now, we've been trying to get the DVDs that we send. For example, when we do campaigns for awards, Gaudí, Goya awards, we try to send them with cardboard or paper envelopes instead of plastic, recycled cardboard or paper. I cannot say that we have implemented this in the entire process. These are one-off decisions that we apply, individual decisions that we apply, but having a list, a to-do list would be nice. A good practice, a good behavior list would be perfect for us.
Juan, you are a graduate in sustainability, and then you decided also to do research on the film industry, and you are writing your master thesis. So what is your look at the film industry?